Hello, this is Stanley Krippner. I'm professor of psychology at Saybrook Graduate School in San Francisco on behalf of 21st Century Radio, run by Dr. Bob Hieronymus. And I would certainly encourage listeners to stay tuned because you will hear things on 21st Century Radio that you'll hear nowhere else on the airwaves.
Welcome back to 21st Century Radio, and that was my big boss, Dr. Stanley Krippner, under whom I slaved for 5.5 years to get my Ph.D. Not my DFA, but my Ph.D. Whoa. Well, joining us now for the next segment is our good friend Rebecca Hoffberger, the founder and director of the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore, to tell us about their current exhibit on parenting and their upcoming Visionary Conference on March the 24th. AVAM's current thematic mega exhibition this year is called Parenting, an Art Without a Manual. Co-curated, I hope I get this one right. This is a difficult one for me anyway. Anna Guyevskaya. Is that almost it? I hope it is. Well, we'll find out from Rebecca. And Rebecca Hoffberger, as usual, alongside the art, they have added ideas from around the world, wisdom teachings, and revelations from all the latest scientific research. And because it's AVAM, everywhere you look, you also see fun. It's one of the funniest places in the city of Baltimore. Welcome back, excuse me, to 21st Century Radio, Rebecca Hoffberger.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Well, our time is so limited, so before we ask you to describe the big exhibit called Parenting, an Art Without a Manual, how about you start previewing AVAM's free annual Logan Visionary Conference happening Sunday, March 24th. This year's title is The Art of Parenting. Who is presenting there?
Oh, my gosh, we have the star-studded lineup of people who are either experts in the field of child trauma, child well-being, family well-being, or researchers from prenatal brain activity in all of us as a species, all the way, the very latest breakthrough information, and it's fascinating. It's Dr. Dan Siegel, and it is Dr. Heather Berlin, who's one of the most articulate researchers, I think, on the planet today. There's a lineup of 7, and it's on our website, at www.avam.org. It's free to everybody, and it will be from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and all we ask is that you register because seating is limited. And then for practitioners only, people who are really in child well-being services on the ground, we have the next morning, free to all staff, a brunch and a private tour to service providers in those industries.
Well, I'm grateful you joined us tonight because I know you're tired. Last night was AVAM's big gala and love feast. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that, of what happened last night?
It was called the Power of Love Gala, and we featured 2 honorees. One, Joe Jones, who is the spectacular founder of Center for Urban Families, but his trying to nurture, make fathers particularly not just paychecks, but real nurturers. And the way he has done that, particularly even with incarcerated dads, has gone around the country. He is a true hero here in Baltimore. But I also honored Darryl Davis, the great boogie-woogie blues musician who has such a capacity to change hearts by just being loving and patient and listening. He is the person who has inspired over 200 KKK Klansmen to give up their membership in the Klan and to gift him their robes.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. How terrific. That is fantastic.
Yeah, it was like a love it last night. It really was.
Yeah. Well, he is the transformer founder of CEO of the Center for Urban Families and devoted to making better dads and moms. Wow. Fantastic. That is fantastic. Well, let's dive in all the way now into the exhibition through September of this year. The American Visionary Art Museum, or AVAM, is focusing on what might be humanity's most essential performance art, the intuitive and complex art of parenting, showcasing works by 36 artists created out of every conceivable medium to best express their own personal life experience of parenting and being parented. So what will we see?
Well, you're at the entry, you see the works, the incredible imagery of Alex Gray, and you get 16 facts that include the latest research. For example, men make sperm every 72 days to maturation. It's being produced in the body. And during that time, what kind of DNA disruptors that they may be very innocently exposed to. For example, there's certain shaving creams that when men shave, there's microabrasions, and if they contain a particular part of a plastic called flattates, what can happen is that can be absorbed into the body, and it will disrupt the DNA in the sperm being reproduced at that time. And so before, everything was on the mother. She shouldn't change kitty litter. She shouldn't eat sushi. She shouldn't go into hot tubs. But now we realize that both parties really need to be very conscious about what they're pulling into their bodies as they take on creating a child.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised at how many things I did wrong.
Oh, no, you have marvelous children. You did a heck of a lot right.
I know, but still, there were so many things there. This is. You guys are so far ahead of just about everything on the East Coast. It's one of the most things I love about AVAM. When I was in, when I was in California, there's only other one place that I feel like I do at AVAM, and that's California, because people are much more conscious. For all kinds of reasons. Well, unlike when you adopt a pet, you are not required to get a license or prove your fitness before you assume responsibility for a human child. AVAM has provided a visionary primer for the nurture and care of the developing child. What are some of these 20 suggestions?
Oh, my gosh. Well, one of the things that's really interesting is that we now know, because we can register where in the brain new information is processed, as well as what is known information. So Dr. Heather Berlin had said the research shows that if in the last trimester you read The Cat in the Hat, for example, to your child while it's still in the mother's belly, and then you make sure that child does not hear The Cat in the Hat again, and you test them when they're 3, 4, or 5 years old again, and they hear it again, and you would think it would be for the first time since they never heard it, since they've been born, but they remember it. So it also has huge implication because so many mothers hear terrible things during their pregnancy. So it makes us much more aware of how we speak to one another and what we expose, even in that last trimester particularly, is really absorbed by us. As a species, we are born so unbelievably dependent on who our parents are. And yet Charles Manson had sons, right? And so so there are animals that can scamper off and know how to walk in just hours after they're born, or, they're much more independent. We are born profoundly, vulnerable to whoever is our parent. And that has enormous implication that this museum, in this show, our museum, really investigates the good, the bad, the horrific, and the sublime of parenting. And it's not just about, being parents. It's also all of us were parented. So there's wonderful work by an artist named Daniel Bellardinelli, who was born into the Joe Bonanno crime family, and what it was like. And it's a very even take. His father was a deeply flawed person, a real mafiosa, but yet more nurturing than the mom was. So it's just an incredibly raw and beautiful sharing of people's parenting experiences. And there's a lot of humor in it, too. I mean, there's a huge arch you walk under that says, parenthood the scariest hood you'll ever go through. And we've all been there.
Yeah,
where
sure
you
have.
lay awake if they're an hour late coming home. You worry, are they in the side of the road in a ditch or whatever. But there's also wisdom. I have 3 pieces that are made out of the inside of pianos by Alan Christian, and above that is a sign by Michael Levine that says, "Having a child makes you no more a parent than having a piano makes you a pianist."
That's. Hey, what children spell love as time? What does that mean?
It means that, we prize certain things, like going to an Ivy League school. You could have gone to Harvard, smell good, look good, make a lot of money, play great tennis, and be the worst father on the earth. And what we're seeing is that there is a beautiful little film from StoryCorps through Spielberg's foundation of a mother who is developmentally disabled but has a little job in janitorial, services, who has a baby who's unusually bright. This little girl grows up to be brilliant, and yet how much love and nurture and what a good job she does as a parent. So when we say that, love is spelled T-I-M-E with kids, it really means that there is another aspect to how kids get nurtured that though it doesn't have to do with how well educated you are or how much money you make. It's more about love.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, it is. Also, in praise of grandparents, tell us why is there a separate section for that?
Great question. We know, for example, in Carroll County, that the amount of grandparents who are now primary parents, custodial parents to children, has skyrocketed because of the opioid epidemic. So more and more, the Pew Foundation has this great study on how many grandparents have had to step up to the plate. Now, sometimes, parents can die from accidents or cancers or whatever, and they have to step in and raise the children. But more and more, with the rate of incarceration that's so disproportionate to the rest of the world that America has, you're seeing more and more grandparents stepping up to the plate. And I think it's about a fifth of them are below the poverty line themselves, yet they make it stretch. So it's in praise of grandparents, frankly, who step up when they should be able to be taking care of themselves, to take care of this next generation.
Well, how well does America parent her own children? What is our report card like compared to the rest of the developed world?
Well, I created a report card based on 3 independent studies, and these weren't. They were looking at the 125 richest countries in the world, and it's not like opinion. Like it has to do with infant mortality, children who die from violence. Just really things that are hard statistics of child well-being. And they looked at, where do children thrive the most? And on all 3 lists, America comes in never comes in the top 25. I think we're number 26. Wow. We're above Lithuania and below Greece. These are countries with a lot less wealth. And so I looked at who were the top 10 performers over and over again in all 3 studies. And I looked at what did they do differently that we could learn from. And none of what they do is antithetical to our U.S. Constitution. So I'm hoping that in the future, candidates will focus on this because, quite frankly, if they say, we can't afford, giving both mother and father, paid leave for those first months that a baby is brought in. But, when you don't do it, you pay on the other end.
And the other end right now is we got to take a break at the top of the hour to hear some news, and we'll return with our guest Rebecca Hoffberger, AVAM's current thematic mega exhibition through September 2019 called Parenting and Art Without a Manual.
Radio 680 WCBM, Baltimore, and WCBM.com.
21st Century Radio is sponsored by Hieronymus & Company. Now more of 21st Century Radio with your host, Dr. Bob Hieronymus.
Who is that man there, painting symbols on the hopes of the world? Who is that man there, talking to the neighbors, meditating on the wisdom of love? It's God's sheriff and he is a reminder, there's a higher law than man's.
Hey, welcome back to 21st Century Radio. You're listening to Bob Grimm, who wrote this song about me, and I forgot what he called me. What he called me? God Sheriff. I don't know how in the world I got that, but that's what he's singing about. Now, who is Bob Grimm? Bob Grimm is the guy that paid me $1,000 to do the Woodstock bus, and I sure as hell never thought that the Woodstock bus would be anything more than one of the other buses that I painted, but geez whiz, that's really something else. Well, welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Hieronymus. Our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Corden. Our engineer, of course, is Anita Brockington. We're talking with Rebecca Hoffberger, AVAM's current thematic mega exhibition through September 2019 called Parenting and Art Without a Manual, and their free annual Logan Visionary Conference on Sunday, March the 24th, 1 to 4 p.m., called The Art of Parenting. You can RSVP to the free conference or learn more about the museum online at avam.org or call them at 410-244-1900. Are you there, Rebecca?
Yes.
One of the questions I forgot to ask, or one of the things I was really on my mind about asking was, oh, goodness gracious, I'm trying to find it again, honey. Ah, there it is. The future of parenting. When you were talking about that, you ask your visitors to think about designer babies with genetic markers added, or the possibility of birthing a clone. What else might be the future of parenting?
Well, the future's really here. I mean, last year in England, for the first time, instead of just the DNA of two human beings, a mother and a father, there were added 3 different human traits from 3 different humans into one child. So the sky is really the limit. I mean, and just like any great power, parenting and this new technology and sex and government and religion are never intrinsically good or bad, but they magnify intent. So this is a huge new power. On the good side, you could edit out certain, negative genetic characteristics, illnesses and things that have been picked up. But it might be a time where it gets debased to a point where the Kardashians could, sell off their DNA so that you could have a Kardashian baby. And that sounds silly, but it's actually the technology is at with CRISPR technology, et cetera, at that point.
Well, I guess that would be a good way, since they're mostly concerned about money and stuff like that. That would be a good way for them to become billionaires overnight, I guess. One human family. You examine the impact of war and enforced migration on families.
Yes.
There's
There's another exhibition that's complementary to the parenting show, which ends the day before Labor Day. Actually, it doesn't go through September. But our most popular by a diverse audience of things we've ever shown were the Holocaust Embroidery Stitch by Esther Krinitz, a Marylander, just for her family. They were embroidered and appliqued, and they were so sweet without a tinge of bitterness of how this simple Polish farming family, how they reacted when the Nazis came in on horseback, to this rural village, and then how it led to the destruction of all but Esther and her sister. And so we looked at other happy families who have their own holidays and jokes and favorite foods and pets, and what happens when suddenly, whether you're in Rwanda or whether you're Native American or whether you're in South Africa or you're in a Rohingya today, whether you're a Rohingya minority today or in Yemen, where you're suddenly odd man out for whatever reason, and you're just a little kid, and all of a sudden they come to take away everything you ever loved. And so it really is a positive, beautiful sharing from people throughout time and place about this horror known as genocide, but also all of those who stood against hate speech, because it really begins with thinking of other human beings as things, as vermin, or as things to be manipulated or diminished in somehow. And that's where evil begins, as when you start to treat people as things and not human beings.
Well, I love the phrase "one human family" because I liken it to what Woodstock would say: "We are one." And what I like to believe in is that we are one people on one planet, and that's where we're headed. Seems like we got a long way to go, but eventually I think we can get there.
Well, that's why I think so many people have loved that Woodstock bus like nothing else that you ever made in any other bus. It's really iconic of that dream. And let's hope we're all going to get on that bus and go in a direction which is kinder. In other words, Dorothy McLean, one of the early mediums at Findhorn, said, unity is not uniformity. You know, that's the great thing. We're not asking everybody to be the same, but we're saying that in that, just like we wouldn't want to have to eat the same food every day or only wear one color. You know, it's a wonderful thing to see the great, vast creation by one creator, and the exhibition is full of the most beautiful quotes, and really talking about people who had the courage, to love. We're a flawed species, but we're at our most perfect when we love, and we're at our most imperfect when we hate.
Yes, I agree with that. Love is the cohesive force of the universe. It's quite an energy there. I also enjoyed reading about how the human brain takes so much time to mature.
I know.
Whoa.
That's another thing. Yeah. Well, this is it. This is real fact. I mean, of course, female brains tend to mature by the age of 20, and we're talking about the frontal lobes are not. And frankly, when I watch kids do really dangerous skiing and skateboarding stuff, I'm thinking, gee, I wish I had tried and learned that before I had frontal lobe maturation. I was worried about breaking my neck, because there are advantages but it also means you need the parent to really help, because the frontal lobes kind of control judgment, in many ways, critical thinking. And so in boys, the frontal lobes do not finish maturing until they're 25 or 26. Yet we, permit, to send them off to war and to buy handguns and all of those things. So I think if we realize, I think the science will more and more inform our compassion towards justice in the future. So that's my hope.
Wow, yes, indeed. Now, before we do run out of time, I don't think I can get to that question, but let's not run out of time before we talk about the artists that are featured in this incredible exhibit, which unfortunately I haven't had a chance to see. My life has been taken over.
I know,
literally.
You're busy. Well, how many, did your parents have the book called The Prophet, the most famous book, The Prophet? And we have an original drawing by Khalil Gibran, and we blew up his poem, Your Children Are Not Your Children. It's the most beautiful spiritual poem about realizing that children are not here to be mini versions of us, but to carry on and to bring humanity forward beyond us and to have their own dreams. We can nurture them, but we can't dictate their futures. So there's so much lively work in the show. Morton Bartlett, who created these amazing dolls and in secret and learned how to sew and crochet, and the dolls are unbelievably lifelike. And they're not creepy, though, I have to say. They're done with great love. There's just so much. There's a group of women from the Catskills took their father's ties. They were middle-aged women, and they stitched all through last cold winter this giant, 10-foot tie, beautifully, intricately made. And then we asked them to characterize their relationship with their dads in 6 words. And one said, he wanted sons, got me instead. He knew many languages, we never spoke. But there were also beautiful things like bound by infinite chains of love. So why people should come to see this show and come with a parent or a sibling and just really digest the whole range. If they had lousy parents, they can learn what was most hurtful and to never repeat that in their relationships with other people beyond even children. And if they had marvelous parents, they know what to emulate. So it's a very comforting exhibition. People have said it's one of the single most healing exhibitions we've ever put on.
I can see why, because this is something the entire world desperately needs.
Yeah, and no one has ever done an exhibition that we have uncovered on this subject. And we also have the post-secrets that were sent to Frank Warren about parenting, anonymously throughout many years, and he pulled about 40 of the best, and we blew them up. And, when people know that they can say what they really think, it's particularly powerful. Mm-hmm. But it's just, remember, there are over 30 artists, and so there's so much to explore, and I hope everybody will come and, just take time with this exhibition. And at the same time, they'll see the beautiful, uplifting, and insightful show called Esther and the Dream of One Loving Human Family.
Oh, yes, that's what I wanted to
get to. The twofer.
Yeah. But as I noted here, actually, as Laura noted to me, but there's a second exhibition in addition and to this annual one. And I just learned about this one tonight, so I don't know much about it. But Esther and the Dream of One Loving Human Family. Please tell us about this second new exhibit currently there, what you were beginning to do that.
What's interesting is if you look at what permitted the genocide of 100 days where 800,000 people were hacked to death, and we're in the 25th anniversary of Rwanda. The Tutsis and the Hutus were intermarried, they did businesses together, but the Tutsis were the minority. So when the Hutu president's plane crashed, the Hutu army said, it was those terrible Tutsis who did it. And it unleashed in a moment, this devastating killing spree. And later it was found out that no, it was actually the Hutu army that themselves had turned against their president. It was a coup from inside. But the damage was already done. So we have to realize that hate speech is a very powerful thing. But in the words of Raphael Lemkin, who termed the term, coined the term genocide, that a conscience, when you have conscience, it's more powerful than any government in the world. And the people who have stood up to care for other people have done the right thing, even during times where the law may have been very against them. Those are the heroes that are the most courageous on the planet. So I can't even wait for people to see it, and it will be up for 5 years. It's that good.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, that'll make a very big difference. We're just about out of time right now. Is there anything that you want to cover before we have to say goodbye?
Just that we're in a time where there are very many different ways to have children, from insemination, from adoption, same-sex couples nurturing. And one of the things that all the studies prove is that if you have a loving adult, whether it's a blood or not, that is the key thing, that someone who cares. And you may not get parented till you're a grown person, and maybe it's a teacher who does it. We wanted to make it a verb of nurture instead of just a biological noun.
Well, no wonder you're a prophet.
No.
No wonder. And it's just wonderful that you're in the city of Baltimore.
Well, I saw that you should fall in love with Zoe, didn't I?
That's right. That's right.
Too. And that brought such a marvelous daughter from that marriage, too.
Yes, Anna is just having the most wonderful time up there. She's near Woodstock right now, and she is so excited about Woodstock. And our family going up there, because, the last time I decided I didn't want to go because 50,000 people were there. And, of course, there was a lot more than that. And I'm kind of sorry I didn't go, but I had to do a mural at Johns Hopkins. That's what you got to do when you got to eat and live. And that's what I did.
Well, your butt's wet, right?
Yes, that's right. Part of my consciousness went up there.
That's right.
And but it did all these things that I didn't know what was happening. I was totally unconscious about it. And a lot of people thought that I made that up, but it's not true. I was artists, it's the latest thing you're working on that you're focused on, not something you did a long time ago. Thank you for joining us, dear, and of course we'll be seeing you again soon, I hope.
I hope so too. I love breathing the same air here. Thank you, and much love to Zoe too.
Thank you, dear. Okay, that was Rebecca Hoffberger, AVAM's current thematic mega exhibition through September 2019 called Parenting and Art Without a Manual, and their free annual local visionary conference on Sunday, March 24th, 1 to 4 p.m., called The Art of Parenting. You've got to RSVP for the free conference, or learn more about the museum online at avam.org, or call them at 410-244-1900. We think you want to use... we want you to go. Obviously, I got to get there. Bye.